Please welcome the W. Crim Singers, led by countertenor Patrick Daly and accompanied by Dr. Leo Davis Jr. The W. Crim Singers is a professional ensemble in residence of the Big Blue Opera Initiatives at Tennessee State University.
Sweet rose, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Sweet rose, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Sweet rose, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Sweet rose, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Sweet Lord, sweet Lord,
sweet chariot
is coming forth to carry me home.
Sweet Lord, sweet chariot
coming forth to carry me home.
I looked over Jordan, and what did I see?
Our Lord is coming forth to carry me home.
All the angels coming after me,
Coming forth to carry me home.
if you get there before I do,
Our Lord is coming forth to carry me home.
tell friends I'm
Coming forth to carry me home.
long, sweet chariot,
Our Lord is coming forth to carry me home.
sweet chariot.
Coming forth to carry me
Father, I stretch my hand to thee. No other help I know. If thou withdraw thy
This little light of mine, oh, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. And this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Oh, everywhere I go, oh, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
I know I've been changed. Oh, I know I've been changed.
Yeah.
Good Lord, I know I've been changed. Yeah, the angels in heaven done sign my name. Good Lord, I
know I've been changed.
Oh,
know I've been changed. Know I've been changed.
Good Lord,
Angels in heaven done sign my name.
I stepped in the water, and the water was cold. You know the
Angels in
yeah.
sign my name.
Oh, it chilled my body, but not my soul.
Angels in heaven done sign my
Oh,
name.
good Lord, do you know you've been changed?
Know I've been changed. Know I've been changed.
Good Lord,
Angels in heaven done
woohoo! Let's sign my
We're gonna have a good time. Way over in you
I must confess that that dream that I had that day has at many points turned into a nightmare. Now, I'm not one to lose hope. I keep on hoping. I still have faith in the future. But I've had to analyze many things over the last few years, and I would say over the last few months. I've gone through a lot of soul searching and agonizing moments. And I've come to see that we have many more difficult days ahead, and some of the old optimism was a little superficial, and now it must be tempered with a solid realism. And I think the realistic fact is that we still have a long, long way to go, and that we are involved in a war on Asian soil, which, if not checked and stopped, can poison the very soul of our nation. I'm not going to say that all of our problems will be solved if the war in Vietnam is ended, but I do say that the war makes it infinitely more difficult to deal with these problems. When a nation becomes obsessed with the guns of war, it loses its social perspective, and programs of social uplift suffer. This is just a fact of history, so that we do face many more difficulties as a result of the war. It's much more difficult to really arouse a conscience during a time of war. There is something about a war like this that makes people insensitive. It dulls the conscience. It strengthens the forces of reaction, and it brings into being bitterness and hatred and violence. I think the biggest problem now is that we got our gains over the last 12 years at bargain rate, so to speak. It didn't cost the nation anything. In fact, it helped the economic side of the nation to integrate lunch counters and public accommodations. It didn't cost the nation anything to get the right to vote established. And now we are confronting issues that cannot be solved without costing the nation billions of dollars. Now, I think this is where we're getting our greatest resistance. They may put it on many other things, but we can't get rid of slums and poverty without it costing the nation something. I feel that nonviolence is really the only way that we can follow, because violence is just so self-defeating. A riot ends up creating many more problems for the Negro community than it solves. You can, through violence, burn down a building, but you can't establish justice. You can murder a murderer, but you can't murder through violence. You can murder a hater, but you can't murder hate. And what we are trying to get rid of is hate and injustice and all of these other things that continue the long night of man's inhumanity to man.
And now, renowned gospel singer Deborah Manning Thomas.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things that I should say. Say them loud, say them clear, for the whole round world to hear. I wish I could share all the love that's in my heart. Remove all the bars that keep us apart. I wish you could know what it means to be me. Then you'd see and agree that every man should be free. I wish I could give all I'm longing to give. I wish I could live like I'm longing to live. I wish I could do all the things I'd like to do. though I'm way overdue, I'd be starting anew. Well, I wish I could fly like a bird in the sky. How sweet it would be if I found out I could fly. Oh, I'd fly back to the sun and look out at the sea. Then I'd sing, 'cause I know, yes. Then I'd sing, 'cause I know, yes. Then I'd sing, 'cause I know how it feels to be free. Oh, I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. Oh, I wish I could say all the things I could say. Say 'em loud, say 'em clear. Say 'em loud, say 'em clear. Say 'em loud, say 'em clear. For the whole round world to hear. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. Sometimes I fear discouraged and think my work's in vain. But then the Holy Spirit revives my soul again. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. If you cannot preach like Peter, if you cannot preach like Paul, oh, you can tell the love of Jesus. You can say He died for all. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead in the end to heal the sin sick on a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And I love that old cross where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. Oh, so I'll cherish the old rugged cross until my trophy at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. Yes, I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophy at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross. Oh, yes, I will. And exchange it someday for a crown. How I got over, how I got over. Know my soul, look back and wonder, how did I make it over? Well, how I got over, I made it on over all these years. You know my soul, look back and wonder, how I made it over. Yes, just as soon as I can see Jesus. Oh, yes. The man who died for me. Oh, yes. He was the man who bled and suffered. Oh, yes. You know he hung on Calvary's tree. Oh, yes. I want to thank you for how he broke me. Oh, yes. I want to thank you for how he taught me. Oh, yes. I want to thank him because he kept me. Oh, yes. I want to thank him because he never left me. I'm gonna sing hallelujah. Just myself, but you
Please welcome Dr. Russ Wigginton, President of the National Civil Rights Museum.
My. Good afternoon. Let us give the W. Crim Singers and Deborah Manning, both who were accompanied by Dr. Leo Davis, another hand for our musical prelude for today's MLK 56 Commemoration. Absolutely phenomenal. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today as we commemorate 56 years since Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination at the Lorraine Motel. In 1968, Dr. King traveled to Memphis, Tennessee to support striking sanitation workers as they demanded their civil and human rights. It's been the National Civil Rights Museum long-standing mission to honor and preserve the legacy of Dr. King. As we chronicle the American Civil Rights Movement and tell the story of the ongoing struggle for human rights here at the museum, we educate and serve as a catalyst to inspire action to create positive social change. I'm reminded of what Dr. King stood for. He said, yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major. Say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness. And all the other shallow things will not matter. Dr. King's legacy urges all of us to continue to push the arc of the moral universe, to bend clearly and directly towards justice. We are honored to have some very special guests joining us today. All of them justice fighters in their own right. Please join me in welcoming Memphis Mayor Paul Young and Tennessee Senator Ramesh Akbari in celebration.
So honored to be here. I'm Mayor Paul Young, and I'm honored to be here 56 years later. Dr. King's words are still some of the most powerful words ever spoken. In 1967, Dr. King said these words. He said, "I say to myself that hate is too great a burden to bear." He said, "I've decided to stick to love, for I know that love is ultimately the only answer to mankind's problems." And I think this is the perfect moment in Memphis history for us to all remember and embrace those words. As the largest majority Black city in the nation, I believe that this is the time for us to speak love and life into our community. Yes. And I firmly believe that we have to be the ones to lead this national discussion. We've got to learn to stop the hate-fueled and negative narrative collectively. And a strong, united community, we're going to have to fight the urge to speak ill and instead use our voices to uplift our city and our people. We must recognize that Dr. King's words are as true as they were then, as are true today as they were back then in 1967. Dr. King said this. He said, You may have the eloquence of articulate speech, but if you have not love, it means nothing. And I want all of us to really hear that. Let us use our words, our eloquence, and our collective voices to share the Memphis narrative that we want the world to know. The largest Black city in America is also the most innovative, the most welcoming, and the most talented city in America. Let us connect our primary attributes with all of the positives that it naturally embodies. Let's lean into the culture, let's lean into the innovation, let's lean into the talent, and most importantly, let's lean into the love. Thank you all so much.
I have to bring the mic down just a little bit. Hello, everyone. My name is Ramesh Akbari, and I have the privilege to serve as the Senate Minority Leader here in the state of Tennessee. I represent Memphis and Shelby County, and this is my 11th year in the General Assembly. So people ask me, why are you still there? And I ask myself the same question, like, did I fall? Did I bump my head? It certainly isn't for the salary. Isn't that right, Justin? But I'll tell you why. Because one of my favorite quotes from Dr. King is, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And so in my position as a state senator, I try and focus on issues that affect our community, from poverty to every child getting a great public school education to getting some of these guns off our streets. People want to look downstream and complain about the problem, and they act like Memphis is the big boogeyman, but quite frankly, the problems are created in Nashville and they trickle down across this entire state. So I want you guys to just don't lose hope. You have people fighting for you. We might be outnumbered, but David was outnumbered when he fought Goliath. And we are scrappy, we are happy, and we will not give up. In the spirit of Dr. King, we will never yield. They may have tried to kill the dream. They killed the dreamer, but they did not kill the dream. And he lives on in our legacy. When we sit in those chambers that were not designed for people like us, when we hold positions that have never been held before, we are etching away and breaking more and more glass to realize Dr. King's dream. So let's stick together. We are Memphis, and Memphis is us. And don't let anybody tell us who we are and what we can't do. Because at the end of the day, we are a beautiful city on the Mississippi River. We are home of the blues, birthplace of rock and roll. We have an eclectic mix of people from black, brown, yellow, Persian, doesn't matter. I'm Blursian. I mean, hell, what is that, okay? But just know, we are the greatest city. We are the greatest city in Tennessee, and we are because of our people and our legacy. Don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. We must march on. Thank you all.
In celebration of our youth, the winners of the I Am a Man poetry contest will perform. These students will be presented by Miss Sharon Wheeler, president of the Memphis Links Incorporated Memphis chapter. Please welcome them as they come.
Good afternoon. I'm Sharon Wheeler, president of the Memphis, Tennessee chapter of the Links Incorporated. I'm bringing you greetings on behalf of 60 amazing and talented women leaders in the city, including our program director, Amanda Morris, our Arts Facet members, Sandra Morris, Pamela Arundel, and Adrian Arundel, and Connie Dyson. And with the Memphis, Tennessee chapter, please stand. It's been a collective effort, and thank you for all your assistance to get us to today. We're so appreciative for the presence of the King family today. The Memphis, Tennessee chapter of the Links is proud, very proud, to have collaborated with the National Civil Rights Museum to inspire the next generation to commemorate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. For 71 years, our chapter has been serving the Memphis community to support worthwhile projects that enhance the quality of life in this city. We are honored to make history again today. Today, for the first time in this sacred space, the focus is on young people. They will commemorate Dr. Martin Luther King's life and legacy in their history, in their words, and in their own way. It is befitting that these young people be the ones to celebrate. Our history and our future is in their care. The spoken word competition was made possible through the support of the FedEx Freight and Baptist Memorial Healthcare. Congratulations, scholars. April 4th will always be heartfelt. And we are thrilled and proud to share these young people's perspective of what it means to them. Thank you. Art Facet member Adrian Arundel will introduce our winners.
The National Civil Rights Museum and the Memphis, Tennessee chapter of the Links Incorporated are pleased to present the I Am the Legacy Poetry and Spoken Word Competition winners. Caitlin Shaw is our third place winner. Caitlin is a sophomore at Middle College High School. Her work is inspired by her mother, who has a gift for turning everyday observations into shared wisdom. Kayla wants to become a civil rights attorney and aspires to achieve a platform to continue Dr. King's work for our community.
In a just world with freedom and equality glistening through its veins, where we all want to be. January 1st, 1863, the day we were all announced free. Yet Dr. King still had to fight for me. My ancestors gained control of their bodies, but our minds, souls, and rights are still left to be unfree. This is our reality, not just a history lesson taught by someone that looks nothing like me. Dr. King, Malcolm X, Miss Assata Shakur shaped me. Now it's time for everyone to receive a part of me to better our nation for this generation and the ones to come after me. I believe the legacy is not only inside of me, but in everyone that looks like me. Oh, to be in a just world with freedom and equality for you and for me. I am the legacy.
Layla Smith is our second place winner. A sophomore at Middle College High School, Layla is committed to building a successful career that reflects her primary values: family, kindness, and grace. She uses her voice to make a positive impact wherever she can with passion, creativity, and faith.
Freedom, freedom. What do you mean? Is it just a word or a feeling unseen? Is it in the wind, in our hair, as we run wild and free? Or is it in the chains that bind us, that we struggle to break free? Freedom, they say, is a birthright we claim. But for many, it's a dream, a flickering flame. In the hearts of the oppressed, it's a battle cry, a call to arms against, reaching for the sky. Justice, oh justice, where do you hide? In the shadows of injustice, do you silently comply? You are the scales balancing right and wrong in a world where the lines blur, where the weak is too strong. You are the voice of the voiceless. It's your truth we seek. But justice is not blind, as they often say. It sees the pain and suffering day by day. Here we stand in the wake of a dreamer's vision. Dr. King, his word carved into the soul of our nation, a legacy of love and justice. He spoke of dreams. I have a dream. For Martin Luther King, his legacy lives on. His dream, our dream, a world free from hate, a world where all are equal. But let's not forget the struggle, the sacrifice made, the lost life for every step we made. There were those who fell, their names engraved in history. As for me, I am legacy.
Darian Lawrence is our first place winner. Darian is a middle college high school sophomore who challenges herself through an ever-expanding love of words and literature. Darian plans to join her family's business as well as continue that entrepreneurial spirit through work as a photographer. She's immensely grateful to her parents who have nurtured her creativity and encouraged her to use her voice.
What's that thing MLK left us? The thing that leaves a bitter taste on man's tongue. That hope for a better future. The hope for an obtainable future. He had the dream, and we had that notion that when his eyes closed, ours would open into our utopia. A Black dream of equality. Yet almost 60 years later, white women still clutch their purses, and Black men are still a threat. Is this what we deserve? Are we not the people the Constitution was talking about? Are we not human? Do we not matter? We have escaped so much, but how far have we really gone? I want to tell my kids the story of our mission, of our fight to freedom, but the same stories I have are the stories that'll make them fear their power. The same stories, the same power they have to overcome and make a change is the same power that makes them dangerous. That same power that put the struggle ahead of them. We can say all day long, we can rave about how far we've come, but really compared to how far we are still running, what have we done? What can we do to empower our people, to give them that strength, that fire that is repeatedly snuffed out? A soul like MLK's doesn't come often. That spark doesn't ignite but once in a while. But even when that fire is blown out, that smoke covers us all. Like a blanket. We feel that dominion and we breathe it in. So what's the thing MLK left us? He left us with a duty, a purpose. He cleared the road and now we have to walk it. That's the thing he left us. He gave us our mission. But who's gonna relight the torch and hold it proudly? Me. I am his legacy.
Thank you for welcoming the I Am the Legacy speakers.
Congratulations. Andrea Waters King is a social justice activist and president of the Drum Major Institute. She has championed several nonviolent, anti-hate, and social change initiatives throughout her life, designing programs to advance understanding and activism. She is a strong supporter of youth activism and believes in helping young people take a peaceful, effective stand for the world issues that concern them most. As president of the Drum Major Institute, she plays a critical role in creating strategic partnerships. She also manages daily operations of this active social justice organization. We're thankful to have with us Reverend Dr. Dorothy Wells Sanders, who will deliver the message. Reverend Dr. Wells is the rector of St. George's Episcopal Church in Germantown, Tennessee, where she has served 10 years. She has recently been elected the 11th Bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Mississippi. Dr. Wells' ordination is scheduled for July of 2024. Dr. Wells holds degrees from Rhodes College, University of Memphis, Memphis Theological Seminary, and Candler School of Theology at Emory University. She is a former practitioner, a former practicing attorney in Memphis, and has served on the board of directors for Metropolitan Interfaith Association, Church Health Center, Room in the Inn Memphis, and the Community Alliance for the Homeless. She is a published author. Her essays can be found in several publications, including the Christian Century, Church Anew, and the Anglican Digest. After a selection from the Crim Singers and hearing from Miss King, the voice after that you will hear will be Reverend Dr. Dorothy Wells.
As I go this wilderness, hear me, Lord, guide my feet in peaceful ways. Turn my rising today. I do not know how long will be. Lord, what's the future for me? But this I know, if Jesus leads me, I shall get home. Get home someday. I'll get home someday. Get home, thank God, someday. Yes, I'll make it home someday. I know I'll make it. Yes, I'll make it home someday.
I know
Make it.
yeah.
I know I'll make it.
Someday
Now, Andrea King.
Good afternoon. Here comes that dreamer, they said. Come, let's slay him, and then we shall see what becomes of his dream. On April 4th, 1968, in room 306, Martin Luther King Jr. ended his earthly journey. And on that day, Coretta Scott King instantly became a single mother to 4 young children. And 4 young children went to bed that night without the comfort of their father. And 40 years later, a little girl was born in Atlanta, Georgia, that would never know the comfort of sitting on her grandfather's lap, hearing bedtime stories. And so here we are today. In some ways, it seems even farther from that dream. But what we know as a family and why we decided to be here today, as difficult as it is for us to stand here, is that there is something that man cannot ever destroy. And that love and that faith and that vision that lived inside of Martin Luther King Jr. now lives inside each and every one of us. Because although the dreamer lost his life, gave and sacrificed for each and every one of us standing here today, the dreamer was silenced, but the dream was not. We are here today to remind America that the dream is alive, that love is alive, that hope is alive. We're here to remind America that no matter how difficult the days are, how dark it may seem, those words still ring true that Martin Luther King Jr. reminded all of us on April 3rd, 1968. He did not make it all the way to the mountaintop, but he ignited in each one of us a vision and a dream. And now in 2024, it is up to each one of us to do our part, our vision in making the beloved community a reality for all of God's children. So we want to thank the National Civil Rights Museum for the work that they do every day at a time when history is being taken from our children. They're here to remind us of our history, because history is not about collective guilt. It is about collective responsibility.
At a time when our daughter, Dr. King's only grandchild, at the age of 16, never got a chance to hug her grandfather, never got a chance to sit on his lap. And all of the sacrifices that he made, she and her peers are now sitting and living with fewer rights than the day that they were born. We're here today because we're a strong people. We are a mighty people. And we are here to remind America that we will continue to stand until all of the triple evils of racism and bigotry and poverty and violence are a thing of the past. And until peace and justice and equity truly rolls down in righteousness from every hilltop, every mountaintop, every place in these United States of America. We're here to remind America that we are united, not by hate, not by division, but by love. One people, united under God. Thank you very much.
Please welcome the Reverend Dr. Dorothy Sanders Wells.
Thank you very much. It is such an honor for me to be with you today. In his 1967 book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. used images that are highly relatable to us in our modern time to speak to the powerful connection between all human lives. That connection which should be propelling us forward into collaborative and cooperative spirits that seek to uplift all persons. Dr. King wrote, "All men are interdependent. Every nation is an heir of a vast treasury of ideas and labor to which both the living and the dead of all nations have contributed. Whether we realize it or not, each of us lives eternally in the red. We are everlasting debtors to known and unknown men and women. When we arise in the morning, we go into the bathroom where we reach for a sponge that has been provided to us by a Pacific Islander. We reach for soap that has been created for us by a European. And then at the table, we drink coffee, which has come to us from a South American, or tea from China, or cocoa from West Africa. Before we leave for our jobs, we are already beholden to more than half the world." Dr. King wrote these words decades before the words global economy became part of our national parlance. He understood the concept of the connection between all humanity and our vocations and being, not because he was an economist, but rather because he was a pastor. And it's Dr. King, the pastor, that I, as a pastor, want to stop and remember and celebrate this day. Our word pastor connotes a shepherd, one who cares for and with guiding and prophetic voice advises and counsels persons in a faith community. And Dr. King embodied all of those traits. It was through his pastor's lens, the way he saw the world, that he knew that all humanity had been made in the image and likeness of our God. We're taught that. And that applies whether we're talking about our flaws or our tremendous gifts. They're all the things that we contribute to the world in which we live. It was with a pastor's sense of justice that Dr. King implored us to follow the commandments that have been given to us by our Creator so that all would be well with us, to love God, to be truthful in all of our dealings, to eschew violence. He urged us to be people who, in the words of the prophet Micah, do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with our God. And he dared to dream of a world in which all of our children would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of the character which is the essence of our created being. It was with a pastor's prophetic voice that Dr. King wrote from a Birmingham jail cell, with a sense of urgency and imperative of living together in unity and without discord and enmity. He wrote much as Paul wrote from a Roman prison to the church in Ephesus and Colonnade and Philippi, and to the letter to Philemon. He shared that with clergy in Birmingham who suggested that perhaps his efforts toward nonviolent desegregation sought too much too quickly. And he said, we must come to see that human progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and persistent work of men who want to be co-workers with God. And without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the forces of social stagnation. It was through a pastor's deep listening that Dr. King heard the command from God that we were to love the most vulnerable in our community among us. We were to love the widow, the orphan, the foreigner, those persons in the ancient world who were almost destined to become impoverished and without resources. Dr. King turned his attention to poverty among all persons in the later years of his life, announcing a Poor People's Campaign at a staff retreat for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in November 1967. Because he recognized that if unabated, poverty would continue to cripple our cities, our states, our nation. Education, jobs, and fair, livable wages were essential to true freedom and the realization of a just society. But it was a pastor's heart that brought Dr. King to Memphis in April 1968. His second visit to Memphis that year, where he came to shine a light on the plight of poor Black sanitation workers. Indeed, poverty and the plight of these striking workers drew him to support them in their quest for three simple things for which they had originally asked: a place to use the restroom in a city where segregated facilities were not available to them during the course of the workday, a place to shower at the end of the day to wash away the stench and filth of garbage, and a way to be able to perform routine maintenance on the trucks so that they could be paid on rainy days when they could not collect the garbage. It was with a pastor's heart that Dr. King spoke at Mason Temple on the night of April 3rd, 1968, about our collective need to support not only these workers, but all persons who struggled invisibly in poverty. In a magnificent retelling of the parable of the Samaritan who stopped to render aid to an injured man on the side of a busy and dangerous road between Jerusalem and Jericho, Dr. King invited us to consider whether the holy men who walked past that injured man may have had all kinds of preoccupations or appointments or fears of the unknown should they stop. And he invited us to look anew at this foreigner, this Samaritan, who stopped and cared for the injured man, used his own resources to provide for him, and did not leave him until he was ensured that he would be cared for. Dr. King asked us to reorder the questions that we ask in our own lives about how we care for neighbors, rather than asking first how we might be delayed or inconvenienced or worse, put at risk because we have put that neighbor first. Dr. King asked us to ask ourselves a very different question. What happens to the neighbor if we don't stop to help? Over the course of the years, we may have seen answers to some of these questions about what happens if we order our questions in the wrong way. If we continue to underinvest in education, we ensure that children will grow up with insufficient skills for the jobs that are needed to be filled in our communities. Our communities will suffer. If we continue to underinvest in our infrastructure, we ensure that most necessary resources will not be available to us when we need them, and our communities will suffer. If we continue to underinvest in our forgotten neighborhoods, we ensure that those neighborhoods will never live into their full potential in helping support our community as a whole with thriving businesses, affordable housing, and a stable tax base. We ensure that neighborhoods continue to be food deserts, healthcare deserts, and resource deserts, literally suffocating the life from our citizens. And we all suffer. If we continue to underinvest in community health care, we ensure a populace with chronically ill persons who cannot live into their full healthy potential and whose ongoing need for care perilously stretches thin our community's medical resources. We all suffer. We are all affected by our choices and decisions. Those choices and decisions have far-reaching consequences. And we sometimes forget that when any of our neighbors are left suffering, we all suffer. We gather today 56 years after an attempt was made to silence one great pastor's voice. But his voice was not silenced. His voice lives on in his sermons, in his letters, in his books, in us. And his voice calls us to live as the prophets Micah and Amos inspired our ancestors thousands of years ago, to live as people who do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with our God until that day that justice does roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Then, and only then, we will know that we have chosen a life's path of loving neighbor as ourself, and we will have chosen well. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Deborah Manning Thomas.
If I can help somebody can cheer somebody with a word or a song. If I can show somebody he is traveling wrong, then my living shall not be in vain. If I can do my duty as a Christian, Lord, if I can bring about beauty to a world wrong, if I can spread love's message as the Master taught, then my living shall not be in vain. Then my living shall not be in vain. Shall not be in vain. If I can help somebody as I pass along, then my living shall not be in vain.
Good afternoon, and welcome to everyone here at the National Civil Rights Museum and those participating virtually. Each year, the Brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated perform a wreath-laying ceremony on April 4th to honor and to commemorate the life of our dear fraternity brother and a great man, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His life inspired many people, especially youth, college students, and young adults. Dr. King's movement, his words, and living life example provided encouragement that could change the direction of our country. And today, in this moment, we hope and pray that these beliefs continue to go forth so our living will not be in vain.
We present this wreath in honor of our brother, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., here in front of the balcony, the place where he was killed and transcended to his eternal home 56 years ago. We as alumni brothers are joined with college brothers to perform this wreath-laying ceremony. Dr. King, the man, showed us that it takes women and men, both young and old, working together effectively to create a movement that will change our world. As we place this wreath, we will take a moment to pause and reflect on the life of Dr. King. Also, we should think about and be challenged by the question he raised. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? We will now share a litany of remembrance of Dr. King, the man, the movement, the moment. We are here today to remember and commemorate the life of a great man.
Dr. King was a man who had compassion on others.
Dr. King started a movement that changed the direction of our country. In this moment today, we reflect on why Dr. King came to Memphis to fight for a cause, and the electricity in his faith and the undying spirit in his will.
We place a wreath on this sacred site as a symbolic reminder that we are a better people, living in a better world, because Dr. King, our fraternity brother, lived among us and for us. Brothers, let's pray together as we lay this wreath. O Lord, may the true spirit return, rule our hearts, guide our thoughts, control our lives, so that we may become complete servants of all.
He's the oldest son of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Mrs. Coretta Scott King. He is Martin Luther King III, a civil rights advocate and global humanitarian, focusing on addressing the most pressing social justice issues of today. He's also amplifying his father's work. Martin Luther King III has devoted his life to promoting global human rights and eradicating racism, violence, and poverty, earning a reputation as a respected international statesman and one of the world's most passionate advocates for the poor and oppressed. As chairman of the Drum Majors Institute, a nonprofit rooted in his father's work over 60 years ago. He collaborates closely with his wife, Andrea Waters King, and daughter Yolanda Renee King to advance Dr. King's vision of a more just and equitable world. Founded in 1961, the organization focuses on continuing the King legacy through education, action, engagement with world leaders, and collaboration with socially conscious organizations. The National Civil Rights Museum is honored to have Martin Luther King III with us today to deliver the keynote address.
Thank you so much. Very warm introduction, and I thank the National Civil Rights Museum to all religious leaders that are here today, to all elected officials, Mr. Mayor, to your lovely wife, to state representatives and senators, to community leaders, to business leaders, to visitors who've come to this city for this moment and this time, and perhaps most of all to the children. Because a nation is judged by how it treats its most precious resource, and that would be our children. Let me also first thank my Alpha brothers for, in a real sense, we all owe a great debt of gratitude to fraternity Alpha Phi Alpha. Why? Because in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, in the midst of memorials to war and presidents, there's only one memorial that is dedicated to peace and justice and righteousness. And that memorial was pulled together, certainly by a lot of people, a lot of corporations, but it is my fraternity, the brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha. And so we all owe a great debt of gratitude, because when anyone comes from anywhere in the world to the United States on the Mall, there's now a memorial dedicated to peace. Now I'm going to do my best to remain as composed as I can this afternoon, because this is a challenge. To stand here at the spot that my father walked out of the room behind me and lost his life. My life and my mother's life and the lives of my siblings were changed forever because the loss of a parent can be transformative. But the fact of the matter, at the tender age of 10 years old, I didn't get to have adult conversations with my father. He did not see me graduate from high school or from his beloved Morehouse College. He didn't get to meet my wife and our daughter, and so many other things. But a great sacrifice occurred. For many years, I used to wonder, what is wrong with a society that chooses to remove someone who was only promoting love? And I remember my father saying, you know, this was back in the middle 60s. Every day we'd see something on the news that was unimaginable. And he'd say, this is a sick nation. And when you are sick, you first have to acknowledge you're sick before medication can be administered to help correct the ills. Now, you know, what we see today is sickness reflected over and over. 56 years later. And I reflect because Dad was killed This day, this is Thursday, 56 years ago, on this day at 6:01 p.m., just 30 or so minutes from now. But we lost our father, and my wife lost her husband. But I believe our nation gleaned an understanding of a mission and a movement. However, we hadn't learned yet. Because Dad told us we must learn nonviolence or we may face non-existence. Some in our society are moving in that direction. And the question is, what are we going to do? Because it's not about me or I, but it's what we do to advance the day when his dream can become real for all humankind. What he and my mother taught is that it only takes a few good human beings to bring about change. Yes, there was the Great March on Washington where over 250,000 people gathered for him to share his dream. And I might add, I have heard the I Have a Dream speech thousands of times, but I've only listened hundreds. You may say, what do you mean by that, Brother King? You see, we listen with our ears, but we hear with our heart. And if we can get people to open their hearts and hear not just that message, but embrace and engage, make it happen, we'll have a better nation and a better world for generations yet unborn. As we stand here this afternoon, and I'm often asked, well, what would your father be doing? And my answer is that had my father lived, we would be on a totally different trajectory. So we may have some issues to address, but they wouldn't be these. These have been repetitive. We keep going around and around. And that's so important. That's why it's critical to make sure we teach history. We call ourselves a democracy, but we don't operate in a democratic way fully. How do you allow in a nation that's supposed to be democratic the fact that we have lost total civility in the political space, and it is elevated to a hatred and a hostility and a hurt that is unacceptable? It's inhumane. Today, in our world, there are over 33 wars going on. Not just Israelis and Palestinians. Not just Russians and Ukrainians. In the Congo, in the Sudan, and because ABC, CBS, and NBC and social media had told you, we don't know about it. So, to kind of correlate this, and I'm not going to be long because we're getting closer to 6:01, and I'm not sure how I'm going to respond at that point. But what I wanted to come and say, as my wife has already enumerated so beautifully, that this nation must come together to live out the true promises of who it says it is. I remember Dad saying, be true to what you said on paper. And yet, there are glaring contradictions that occur each and every day. Now, I don't need to enumerate all the issues because we should all know them. But I will say, in the United States of America, which we call ourselves, oh, and by the way, we do not exemplify that. We could, But right now, we are not the United States of America. You know, it's just really perplexing to me how we can find money to fight wars, no matter where they are. We always find money for ammunition, but we can't provide clean water for people in the United States. Whenever there's a war, here we come. You know, you used to have that bugle, and send people to the front line to die. There's something wrong with that. We are not exhibiting the kind of behavior that we should. Again, in the United States, everybody should be able to have a decent job. This is the largest economy on planet Earth, trillions of dollars. And we have the audacity to have poor people. And it's because we have not focused to address it. A strategic plan can address it. I don't mean just giving a person a fish. Yes, some of that we have to do, but we can create the community and climate so that people can take care of themselves and their families. Everybody in America should be able to have a decent job with decent pay. Everybody should be able to have a decent home. A decent home could be the circumference of a little bit further than this little space right here. It doesn't have to be a 10,000 square foot home. Some may have that. But a decent home in the United States, we should be embarrassed as a nation that we still have levels of poverty. Everyone should be able to have the best education, not some schools having good and great educations and others being inferior. That's unacceptable. Everyone should be able to have health care. Greatest health care on the planet, greatest health systems, the greatest technology found here. But yet people can't afford to pay for it. Probably shouldn't be paying for it anyway. There's other ways to do it. And everyone should be able to have justice. We have a criminal system. It's not a criminal justice system. A criminal system that targets the least of these, poor folk. Yeah, our jails are full of black folk, 67 to 80%. Not just in Shelby County, by the way, but all over America. Latino and Hispanic brothers and sisters, and poor white folk. So unless we demand the system work so that everyone has a fair opportunity to be treated with dignity and respect. By the way, all of what we're here for today came to fruition because of the mistreatment of sanitation workers who walked picket lines, who were working full-time hours for less than part-time pay. We owe those families a debt of gratitude. But Dad came and chose to engage with his voice in this unjust set of circumstances. So take a look at what corporate executives are making and how their pay continues to increase. But masses of people, they can't hardly make it. How food prices are going up instead of going down. Y'all remember, I was talking to my sister a year or so, you know, when the price of eggs went up. Things are supply and demand, right? And they went up significantly. But there wasn't no more chicken. It wasn't like there was a shortage of chickens. So it's greed. We are consumed with this greedy complex. You know, I'm not suggesting everyone has to do this, but I was in an office one day with one of my father's lieutenants. He had a picture of Dad behind him, and he said, this man, and I'll tell you who his name is, though many of you would know this name, and that's Hosea Williams. And he was sitting in his office and started shedding tears, and he said, this man, he did a number of things He conquered the love of wealth and the fear of death. Think about that. When you are not concerned about, consumed and concerned about wealth, and you aren't afraid to die, you are virtually unstoppable in your quest. That is what Martin Luther King Jr. represented. He was focused. He and his team were strategic. And he did all this in love. There was always room for people to dialogue in a civil way. And he didn't go counsel you because you had a different position. You know, we don't like what people say, and we just counsel them now. That's very unfortunate that we're at that juncture in this nation that we call home. That also is called the United States of America, but yet not united. Now, I want to leave you with a challenge, because I hope that we want to create a nation that delivers for our children, that delivers for our seniors, that delivers for our veterans. I'm sort of not with war, but those who have fought for our country, they should be lifted up, not mistreated, dying on the streets. So our children must be taken care of. Our seniors must be. Our veterans must be. Those of us who are in between got to figure out how to make it. You see, Dad and his team, Mother and her team, and many of us have shown us how to make America what it ought to be. See, Dad never used and talked about America is great, or even the phrase great again, because I personally just don't know when that period was. Not for my people. Not for the indigenous population that was here before any of us. When has America been great? Doesn't mean we can't become, but we're just not there yet. And so Dad talked about the America that should be and could be. And he did all that he could for his short life, 39 years, to create the climate for that to happen. So I ask you, as I get ready to close, what are you going to do? Are you going to be like a thermometer or a thermostat, he would say? Look at that analogy. Thermometer is a great device. It basically records the temperature. If it's, 70, it'll say 70. If it's 30, it'll say 30. But that's all it does all day long, is record the temperature. There's another device called a thermostat, and it regulates the temperature. And so in life, we must decide whether we're just going to record and go along to get along, or whether we're going to create the climate for change and justice and righteousness and peace. We as human beings can do that. History has shown us that time and time again. So it's not where you stand in times of comfort and convenience, Dad would say, but it's where you stand in times of challenge and controversy. On some questions, he said, the coward position is it safe? Expediency says, is it political? Vanity says, is it popular? But there's something deep inside all of us called conscience. Ask, is a position right? So we must take positions sometimes that are neither safe nor popular nor politic, but we must take those positions because our consciences tell us they're right. So I ask you this evening, what is right for you and right for America, for Americans of all walks of life to exist? Because this country came into being because a lot of people were working to make it what it is. But we're not finished. In fact, we're not even close to where we ought to be. we got to go back and beyond quadruple our efforts. I'm so inspired by generations younger, the younger generation, the generation of our daughter. And I must share this story. I believe I see Justin Pearson. Representative Pearson down. This brother and one of his other colleagues, I'm bringing this up because I don't understand your state legislature. How y'all allow people to run your government, and all they were doing was bringing an issue that their constituents, and they are concerned about, but their constituents were raising. They weren't just raising something by the side of the road, and it was about safety. It was about our nation moving forward. And you get thrown out of the body by somebody who, I don't even know what the people are thinking. I understand guns. I should be the first one to want to have a gun. My dad stood right here talking to someone and was gunned down. So sure, I should be like, well, let me get a gun and go shoot somebody who did that. Because, certainly you all believe that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth works, right? We believe that, right? But think about it. If that philosophy worked, most of us would be without eyes and teeth. There's got to be a higher level that humanity moves to. And that's what Martin Luther King Jr. taught us. That's what other young people, Mr. Representative, are representing. That's what my daughter represents. I got to say this. I got to brag before I leave. 2016, we were invited to the White House, the last year of President Obama. And we said to our daughter, Andrea, and I said, Yolanda, you got to come up with a question to ask the president. We didn't tell her anything else. She gets into the Oval Office. We were there because all the many times we'd gone in the almost 8 years the president had been there, we'd not been in the Oval Office to see the bust of Dad that is still displayed there and has been there since President Obama. But my point is, when she asked that question, the president gave her an answer, and it wasn't sufficient initially, but he kept talking, and she finally felt comfortable. Less than a year and a half later, Parkland, Florida occurred, where 17 people were killed by a young student who came to a school and just exhibited hatred and hostility and mental illness. About a year later, I'm sorry. The question was, Mr. President, what are you going to do about these guns? Think about that. This is 2016. 2017, Parkland occurs. And then 2018, the March for Our Lives, where over 800,000 people assembled in Washington, D.C. A lot of students from Parkland, but students from Chicago. Those young people brought together students from Los Angeles, students from Texas, students from New York, all saying, we got to do something about guns. So Yolanda was asked to speak, and she learned that morning, Saturday when it was, that she was going to speak. Very quickly, this is what she said, and she blew us away. She said, I'm Yolanda Renee King, granddaughter of Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King. My grandfather had a dream that his 4 little children would live in a world where they would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. She then said, I have a dream too. And my dream is enough is enough, and we must create a gun-free world. Doesn't mean that it will happen tomorrow, but until it's put into the universe, it can't begin to happen. It is now in the universe, and we will get there someday. I wish I could wave a magic wand and we were there today, but we're not. So as I close, we perhaps know what our challenge is. I must encourage us, please participate in the upcoming elections, not just in November, but every time there's an election. Dad told us a voteless people is a powerless people. And one of the most important steps we can take is that short step to the ballot box. Now, when we do that, we also have to hold elected officials accountable. Because when you hold folk accountable, then you are able to engage them to build community. We must build community and not continue to build bombs that destroy life and humanity. So do not get anyways tired, as the song says, because we've come much too far from where we started. But no one ever told any of us that our roads would be easy. But I know our God did not bring any of us this far to leave us. Thank you, Memphis. Thank you, Memphians. Thank you, all of those who come from around the world. Let's keep building the National Civil Rights Museum so that we know, appreciate, and promote the true history of this place called the United States of America. And one day, we'll be able to wear that badge with honor. Thank you, and God bless you.
And then I asked myself, what is it that I would want to say when I leave the word to you this morning? If any of you are around when I have to meet my day, I don't want a long funeral. And if you get somebody to deliver the eulogy, tell them not to talk too long. Every now and then I wonder what I want them to say. Tell them not to mention that I have a Nobel Peace Prize. That isn't important. Tell them not to mention that I have 300 or 400 other awards. That's not important. Tell them not to mention where I went to school. I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to say that day that I tried to be right on the war question. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try to feed the hungry. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say on that day that I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. I want you to say that I tried to love and serve humanity. Yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness. And all of the other shallow things will not matter. I won't have any money to leave behind. I won't have the fine and luxurious things of life to leave behind. But I just want to leave a committed life behind. And that's all I want to say. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word of song, if I can show somebody he's traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. If I can do my duty as a Christian, or if I can bring salvation to a world once wrought, if I can spread the message as the Master taught, then my living will not be in vain. We have an opportunity to make America a better nation. And I want to thank God once more for allowing me to be here with you. You know, several years ago, I was in New York City autographing the first book that I had written. While sitting there autographing books, the minute black woman came up, the only question I heard from her was, "You, Martin Luther King?" And I was looking down writing, and I said, "Yes." The next minute, I felt something beating on my chest. Before I knew it, I had been stabbed by this demented woman. I was rushed to Harlem Hospital. It was a dark Saturday afternoon. That blade had gone through, and the x-rays revealed that the tip of the blade was on the edge of my aorta, the main artery. And once that's punctured, you're drowned in your own blood. That's the end of you. It came out in the New York Times the next morning that if I had merely sneezed, I would have died. Well, about 4 days later, they allowed me, after the operation, after my chest had been opened and the blade had been taken out, to move around in the wheelchair in the hospital. They allowed me to read some of the mail that came in, and from all over the states and the world, kind letters came in. I read a few, but one of them I will never forget. I had received one from the president and the vice president. I've forgotten what those telegrams said. I'd received a visit and a letter from the governor of New York, but I've forgotten what that letter said. But there was another letter that came from a little girl, a young girl, who was a student at the White Plains High School. And I looked at that letter, and I'll never forget it. It said simply, "Dear Dr. King, I am a 9th grade student at the White Plains High School." She said, "While it should not matter, I would like to mention that I'm a white girl. I read in the paper of your misfortune and of your suffering. And I read that if you had sneezed, you would have died. I'm simply writing you to say that I'm so happy that you didn't sneeze. And I want to say tonight, that I too am happy that I didn't sneeze, because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1960. When students all over the South started sitting in at lunch counters. And I knew that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream, and taking the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy, which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around.
May we pause for a moment of silence in recognition of the time of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination at 6:01.
I wouldn't have been down in Selma, Alabama to see the great movement there if I had sneezed. I wouldn't have been in Memphis to see a community rally around those brothers and sisters who are suffering. I'm so happy that I didn't sneeze. And they were telling me, now it doesn't matter now. It really doesn't matter what happens now. I left Atlanta this morning, and as we got started on the plane, there were 6 of us. The pilot said over the public address system, "We are sorry for the delay, but we have Dr. Martin Luther King on the plane. And to be sure that all of the bags were checked, And to be sure that nothing would be wrong on the plane, we had to check out everything carefully. And we've had the plane protected and guarded all night. And then I got into Memphis. And some began to say the threats, or talk about the threats that were out. What would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am weak, when I wake, grows dream, precious Lord, linger near, and the day is past and gone, past and gone. Take my hand, guide my feet, and lead me home. Precious Lord, precious Lord.
I invite you to stand as you are able for the benediction. May the God of peace make you complete in everything good, that you may do what is God's will and what is pleasing in God's sight. May the God of grace strengthen your inner being through the power of the Holy Spirit, that you may be renewed for service in God's world. May the God of love fill your hearts with the love of Christ, that you may share that love with one another and with all of God's people. And may the blessing of God Almighty, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit be among you and remain with you always. Amen.